Hello, everyone. This morning we are going to be talking about the Congo Free State and the Red Rubber System, which led to a series of atrocities in this particular part of Africa during the larger movement known as the Scramble for Africa. Now, the story of the Congo Free State begins with King Leopold II of Belgium. King Leopold II of Belgium organized what was called the International Africa Association. The International Africa Association was a group that was supposedly created to go in and bring humanitarian aid to the people of Central Africa. In reality, the International Africa Association was being used by Leopold to chart Central Africa, to kind of get the lay of the land, and to establish an early presence in the region that he could later exploit. When the Congress of Berlin in 1884 met, due to Belgium's presence in the Congo, King Leopold II was able to effectively get the European countries there and the United States of America to recognize Belgium's claim over the Congo. Now, what King Leopold II failed to realize initially was that the Congo was this vast territory of rainforest. It wasn't super commercially profitable. It didn't have the resources that he initially thought he would be able to find, diamonds specifically. So King Leopold had to try to find a way to make the Congo profitable for him. Leopold passed a series of laws that effectively reduced the people of the Congo to serfs. They were only allowed to sell their agricultural products to the Belgian government itself, and this was somewhat of a feudal system going back to kind of the Middle Ages if you think about it. Now, initially, a bunch of private companies were actually very distressed by this because this was not promoting capitalism and free trade, which was one of the hallmarks of the 1884 Congress of Berlin. So what King Leopold II did is he granted concessions to various companies in different parts of the Congo. Now, due to the popularity across Europe of bicycles during this period and the growing popularity of the car, rubber became one of the most prized resources in Europe. Now, rubber is best grown in tropical environments, and so what happens is that Leopold II, in granting concessions to these various companies, gave them effectively a monopoly on being able to take rubber and ivory from these parts of the Congo Free State. And perhaps the most notorious of these companies, you'll see right here in the dark red, and that is the Abeer company. That's going to be the one that's partially responsible for a lot of these atrocities. And of course, the second area right here is, you see the domain of the crown? That's Leopold's own little personal area. This is where we're going to see the heaviest concentration of what's about to come. Now, the companies that were granted a monopoly on rubber and ivory extraction in the Congo Free State effectively had no regulation whatsoever. The laws allowed them to compel the people of the Congo to produce rubber in any way that these companies saw fit. And they could use some really horrific methods to do this. In order to compel the people of Congo to produce rubber, Leopold II created what was known as the Force Publique. The Force Publique was a military organization that was made up of a combination of Belgian soldiers and mercenaries from other parts of Africa. The Force Publique would be armed with modern weaponry, but also with what was known as the shikot. And a shikot was basically a whip that was coated in hippopotamus hide. And the Force Publique is going to be the main organization that's responsible for carrying out the atrocities that are going to occur. Now, the people of the Congo, they were given quotas of rubber that they had to produce. These quotas were unrealistically high. Most of these villages would never be able to fulfill these quotas. And so what happened is that Leopold II and the Abeer Company, when these villages were unable to produce the amount of rubber that they were told to produce, what was ordered was the deaths of the people living in these villages. Now, the Force Publique was tasked with carrying out the killing of the Congolese people who didn't produce enough rubber. And the Force Publique, it was initially suspected that they actually wouldn't go and kill these people, not because of some kindness, but rather because the ammunition, they thought that the Force Publique would use that for hunting of exotic animals. So the Abeer Company and Leopold II mandated that they were to bring back hands. The Force Publique had to bring back the hands of the villagers to show that they had actually killed them. Now, the Force Publique, which was hoping to be able to have their cake and eat it too, rather than shooting the Congolese people and bringing back their hands of proofs of their death, would instead just cut the hands off of still living people so that they could use their ammunition to hunt animals. Now, that being said, did a lot of the Congolese people wind up getting shot? Yes, absolutely they did. Mass murder was very common. Beheadings were common. Many of the heads were placed on pikes as a warning to other villages to produce more rubber. Rapes were very common. Beatings were common. And as you can see from these pictures, this is happening to kids who are as young as 4 years old are being treated in this way. And this is absolutely horrific. Some of the estimates state that up to 10 million Congolese people lost their lives in this red rubber system. Some estimates go as high as 15 million, and that's roughly about 75% of the population of the Congo. So the Congo is massively depopulated by these exceptionally harsh methods. Now, what eventually brings to light what's going on in the Congo are a number of journalists. The ones I'm going to really talk about, though, are on the left, E.D. Morel, and on the right, Roger Casement. Now, E.D. Morel was a part-time journalist, and he was very interested in writing about Africa. What he noticed was that the ships that were coming into Europe loaded with rubber, they left Europe loaded with supplies of guns and ammunition. And he thought this was actually quite strange. So he wound up quitting his job and he founded a newspaper called the Africa Daily Mail. Using his newspaper, he began to investigate what was going on in the Congo under Belgium's rule. I'm really sorry if you can hear my dogs growling and playing in the background here. Now, E.D. Morel eventually linked up with Roger Casement over there on the right. And in 1904, Roger Casement would actually travel to the Congo and he would write what was known as the Casement Report. And this report gave a fairly accurate summary of what was going on, these atrocities that were taking place. So when Casement comes back with this report, which he presents to the British Parliament to try to get them to take action, E.D. Morel and Roger Casement together formed the African Reform Society. The Africa Reform Society, think of it as a political lobbying organization, and what they set forth to do was to basically discredit Emperor or King Leopold II, to show him in the negative light that he rightfully should be portrayed in because of these atrocities that were taking place. Now, a lot of celebrities actually joined in the Africa Reform Society. So you had people like Booker T. Washington from the United States, W.E.B. Du Bois in the United States, Mark Twain joined in, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, British writer, joined in as well. And all of these individuals were instrumental in getting the British Parliament to effectively denounce King Leopold II. In the United States, the U.S. Congress would also denounce Leopold II, and they would put pressure on President Teddy Roosevelt to do the same. Roosevelt was actually quite reluctant to do so initially until Congress really started to pressure him because of the efforts of the Africa Reform Society. So the end result of all of this was that Leopold II was forced to turn the Congo Free State over to the Belgian government so that the Belgian government would then be responsible for regulating what was going on there and hopefully putting an end to the atrocities. King Leopold II, when he turned over the Belgian Congo to the government, he was paid a pretty hefty sum of money to do so. And he would actually die without ever facing prosecution for these atrocities that took place. Now, like I said in a previous video, in Belgium, you're not going to find a lot of mention of these atrocities under the Red Rubber system. However, it was extremely well documented. You saw the picture a little bit earlier on. That was one of many photographs that were taken during D.D. Morel and Roger Casement's study of the Congo. And the people pictured actually asked for their photos to be taken because they wanted the European and American public to take pity on them and hopefully put an end to what was going on. So what we see going on in the Congo Free State is actually a much, it's kind of a smaller example of a much larger movement in the Scramble for Africa, which is exceptionally poor treatment of the African people by the Europeans who are coming in. And the poor treatment isn't going to end with the Congo Free State being turned over to the Belgian government, because we're still going to see it in German territories, Portuguese territories, British territories. And we're going to see this poor treatment continue until many of these African territories get their independence in the post-World War II era. So I hope that was helpful to you all in understanding the atrocities that took place in the Congo. And please make sure that you keep updated on the Google Classroom site. I will be releasing more videos in the coming weeks about the topics that we are covering. All right, everyone, have a good day.